So how has the conference been for people? Good? Yeah. How did you like who I picked to take my place at Whole Foods, Jason? You did a good job today. So, kind of what I'm going to talk about is these are just some kind of thoughts about conscious capitalism, and so I'm going to cover some wide ground. I am going to lean into some things. I'm going to say some things that people could react to, but I'm going to be coming, I think, from a place of love, and I'm going to talk about love some in this talk. So the book talks a little bit about the history of conscious capitalism. Raj mentioned it a little bit. I'm going to say a few other things. So first, where did the name come from? Muhammad Yunus, Nobel Prize winner, Peace Prize winner in 2006, was the first one that I know that used the term, and that's ultimately where we came up with it. I started using the term back when Michael Strong, who was, still is a good friend of mine, we co-founded a nonprofit organization called FLOW, Freedom Lights Our World. And we had 3 initiatives in that. One was conscious capitalism, peace through commerce, and accelerating women entrepreneurs. And then, as that nonprofit, when I realized that I was the most passionate about conscious capitalism, I really wanted to speak out on it. I really wanted to get other people involved. And Michael was much more interested in peace through commerce and accelerating women entrepreneurs. And I remember we had this big meeting at my ranch, and we had the founders of the movement were all there. Timothy Henry was there, and Rand was there, and Raj was there, Cheryl was there, and a bunch of other people were there. So if I left you out, because I couldn't think of you right now. And we decided to create this kind of movement. And I had connected with Raj because, surprisingly, I was like, you know how you ever had these airplane conversations and it become pivotal in your life? I had several. And so I'm on this airplane ride, and this person starts talking about this book they're reading called Firms of Endearment. And he says, yeah, your company's in this book. And I said, really? And so then I got the book and I read it, and I loved Firms of Endearment. It's a tremendous book. How many people here have read Firms of Endearment? Yeah, there you go, Raj. And fantastic book. I first met Raj's co-author, David Wolf, and we met, and he said, you got to meet Raj, and I met Raj, and just fell in love with Raj. How can you not fall in love with Raj? He's got. Well, I can't talk about this. I got to save it for my introduction. So I'm gonna hold on the Raj story. But I will say that the first conscious capitalism gathering, we had about 15 people in Austin, and Raj was not there, but his co-author David Wolf was there, and oh my God, I was the only actual capitalist at that meeting. I don't know what it was, but they all were anti-capitalist, except for maybe David. And it was like, all I knew is like, well, next time we do this, I'm going to invite some real business people here. Because none of them were business people, but they had a lot of opinions about capitalism and what we needed to do about it. And so we began to bring people together that were committed, that were business people that were committed to capitalism. And at the same time, as I always like to say, capitalism is good. And people don't understand this. I'm a big defender of capitalism because what people don't know, they really don't know what the world was like 250 years ago. I'm going to give you some statistics that'll kind of blow your mind. Statistic number 1, 94% of all the people alive on the planet Earth were living on less than $2 a day. And that's in today's dollars. 85% were living on less than $1 a day. Illiteracy rates, only 12% of the population in the world could read. The average lifespan was 30. We lived in an incredible society where it was a patriarchy, women were not empowered. It was a very racist world, racist in every place. It was racist. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And it has been capitalism taking the ideas of science, that has lifted humanity literally out of the dirt. Economic freedom did that. Capitalism did that. And yet, it's hated. It's extraordinary how many people hate capitalism. It's very frustrating to me. And yes, we don't want to have a capitalism that was like 200 years ago. And it's not like that anymore. It's come a long way. But we can make it better. And that's what conscious capitalism is about. It's taking the economic system of capitalism and improving it, making it better, making it more conscious. But business itself is based on voluntary exchange. It creates value for other people. It's not just conscious capitalists that are doing good in this world. Most businesses are. And yes, there are bad actors in business, just like there are bad actors in government, bad actors everywhere, because human nature has an element of corruption to it. Once we got the book published, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I do the introduction, but writing that book with Raj was an extraordinary experience. And we didn't always see eye to eye. We did argue a lot, went back and forth, but it was a great experience. And again, I don't want to mess up my introduction. I'll just save a little bit of that for a little bit later. But I want to talk about conscious capitalism. I want to talk first about the brand name. So it's a good name, don't you think? Conscious capitalism. It's got, kind of got a alliteration. It's got a little ring to it. I think one way to understand the title is to put it within a developmental framework. Just quick survey. How many of you are kind of familiar with integral philosophy or spiral dynamics or a developmental perspective on the world? I'm just curious. It's okay if you're not. So I use the developmental framework to understand the world. And I'm going to oversimplify it, but let's just say right now there's basically three major things, particularly in advanced countries. First, you have a traditional society. Traditional society in America manifests, say, as very patriotic, very religious and traditional religious background. Oftentimes has a rural component to it. It's kind of the salt of the earth, really the really good people that and very conservative in nature. A lot of the heart of the Republican Party is in this traditional. And that's about 30% of the population. Then you've got the modernist. And the modernist is what began to happen with the Enlightenment, rationality, reason, science, progress, and capitalism. Capitalism did not exist before modernity existed. Capitalism is a product of modernity. And so most of the great progress that capitalism has been driven couldn't have happened if you were not in a more modernistic society, for example, that believed in individualism, freedom, and letting people to the belief in sort of progress. And then there's postmodernism or progressivism. And each of these developments comes out of sort of the flaws of the previous development or the incompletes. So we know traditionalism has an element of patriarchy, has an element of religious fanaticism. It could have in there. It has racism can be implicit in that. And so modernity has struggled with traditionalism. It had to break away. Think of Galileo and, and the Catholic Church trying to hold him back. And think about the progress just to be able to do science and to make progress. So those were some of the flaws of traditionalism. And then modernism created this cornucopia of abundance that's spreading around the world. It was restricted. When I was younger, it was pretty much just kind of a European American thing. And now it's broken out all around the world. Look at Asia's tremendous progress as they embrace modernity. But the problem is that there are flaws in modernity, right? You get, we didn't solve all the racial problems. We didn't solve, we had environmental problems began to come out with modernity, which we saw like with Mackey's showing the waste that we have and the destruction that happens to the environment that modernity has created. And so postmodernism and progressivism has come out partly as a correction to the flaws of modernity. So what's interesting about conscious capital, and I do believe there's something that you develop beyond progressivism, which would be an integral stand or an integral perspective, which basically tries to synthesize, or the higher ground, as Rand likes to talk about, which integrates the best of traditionalism, the best of modernity, and the best of progressivism into a higher position that synthesizes the best elements of all of them. But the brand, conscious capitalism, powerful brand, but the tension is between the capitalism part and the conscious part, right? These things have a tension there. And that's because they come from different worldviews, different frameworks. Capitalism comes from that modernism, and conscious comes from the postmodernism or the progressive perspective. And those of you, those that know me well, people on the board, know that one of my deepest fears is that consciousness, the conscious part, is going to eat up the capitalism part. It's going to disappear. And it's just going to be, the whole idea of the whole capitalism is going to be, the anti-capitalists are going to take it over. That's my fear. It's been something I've been articulating ever since we started this movement. And the very first meeting I had with all the anti-capitalists, they were already trying to take it over. I will tell you something about business. It's really, really hard to make money. It really is. I'm reliving it because, Whole Foods became very successful and profitable, but it took a long time to do it. Now I've got a startup, Love.Life. Burn rate. Oh my God. How long can we sustain this? We got to make more money. And so I'm back in the startup mode, and it reminds me of people take for granted the struggles of business. But to be able to do business well and create value for people is difficult to do. And I just sometimes think that's forgotten by people, particularly on the consciousness side. They want to do all these wonderful things, and they just kind of assume that money's going to be there. But you know what? If the capitalism part disappears, all the consciousness stuff disappears too, because it's built on that foundation. And if the foundation is eroded, the consciousness is going to be eroded too. So I've kind of articulated that fear, and there are so many moves out there, I think, to, stakeholder capitalism, conscious capitalism. I feel like in some ways they're getting weaponized by the anti-capitalists to take power from the owners. This is a terrible thing, this whole idea that somehow or another we need to democratize through stakeholders and the owner shouldn't be able to make all these decisions is a very, very bad idea. The only way, the owners only get paid after all the other stakeholders are paid, right? They only get the residual, what's left over. Who gets paid first? Customers, right? When they trade. In fact, they generally get their goods and services before they pay for it. And they pay for it later. Then your employees or team members, they get paid next. They get paid after a week or 2 weeks. And suppliers get paid after that. They usually have like 30-day terms, and sometimes, like in the book business, 90-day terms. And so but when do the investors get paid? When do the owners get paid? They get paid only if there's something left over. And I can tell you from my experience in the co-op movement before I got going, is when the other stakeholders run the business, there isn't much capital left over because they want to take that capital and redistribute it to themselves. That's always been the struggle of the co-op movement, is to hold on to capital. But if the owners lose control of business, capitalism will die, the consciousness part will then erode, and we'll be in some kind of supposedly utopian, wonderful place, but it'll be a totalitarian nightmare, as it always has been and probably always will be. I'll talk about business purpose a little bit, particularly about maximizing profits and shareholder value. So part of the insight of conscious capitalism is that business has its potential for higher purpose, right? It's not just about making money. And we rightly criticize businesses that focus only on that, right? But making money is really important. You can't just throw it out. It's there too. The economic purpose is essential, and it can't just be thrown away. The highest business purposes are always going to be connected to creating value for customers. Ultimately, that's the intrinsic purpose that each business has to manifest, value creation for customers. Now, we can articulate that in noble terms, as Whole Foods does, nourishing people and the planet. Yeah, that's what we're doing for our customers, nourishing people, nourishing our customers. And when we do that well, you make money. So the purpose, if done correctly, is one reason when you have a higher purpose, it motivates and energizes people, inspires people. But that creates the economic rewards that creates the business to be a perpetual machine that can continue to operate far into the future. And one of my concerns is that purpose is being misunderstood, because it is this higher purpose. It has to do with creating value for customers. And it's all of these, that's an internal drive. And all of these external purposes are now coming into business. And in my idea, in my perspective, the danger of hijacking the purpose of business. And as Cheryl Rosner has taught me that it has to flow from, you can listen to stuff from the outside, but then it has to be filtered into your own business philosophy. But if it tries to hijack the purpose for, say, societal aims, then business is going to lose its way. And that just shouldn't happen. So is ESG important, for example? Of course it is. It's very important. But that has to be something that each company interprets its own way. It's not about some external scorecard that the business has to live up to, or somehow or not. If it's not living up to somebody's external expectations, then it's not good at ESG. ESG is something that the business itself has to bring forth out from itself to the world, not from the world to the business. So, for example, Whole Foods Market has done amazing things philanthropically. I mean, from the Whole Planet Foundation to the Whole Kids Foundation to the Whole Cities Foundation to what we've done with seafood sustainability, animal welfare. One of the reasons the animal welfare people keep attacking us is because we're the only ones that ever listen to them. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think are some misunderstandings about stakeholders. This is one of the things I think people might find is controversial. So all stakeholders matter, but they're not all equal. They're not all equal. They don't all matter the same amount. Unless you have a hierarchy in your stakeholders, you're going to get lost. You're never going to have, your business is going to get lost. So to me, the three most important stakeholder groups are obvious. Customers. I've always thought they were the most important. No customers, no business. End of story. Team members. How can you do your business unless the team members are creating value for the customers, and how can you do that if they're not happy? And third, the investors or the owners. Those are the three most important stakeholders, and they're the ones that have to be harmonized the most. Then after that, I'd say the suppliers and the communities that business does business in. They're obviously very important as well. But I still think they're less important than those three main ones that really drive the business forward. And what makes those five stakeholders particularly important? They're the ones that voluntarily exchange with the business. What people don't understand about business is inherently ethical because it's based on voluntary exchange. No one has to trade with the business. If you don't like Whole Foods Market, and most people don't, we only got a 3% market share. 97% are doing business elsewhere. And if you don't like Whole Foods, you have alternatives. We don't have a monopoly. And in fact, if we don't do a good job, we lose customers. Nobody has to work for Whole Foods. In fact, even as I speak, I promise you people are quitting Whole Foods Market at this very second because we got 105,000 team members there. No supplier has to trade with us. No we don't have any investors except for Amazon anymore, but when we were public, no one had to own our stock. And the communities that you're part of and you have to be good neighbors with, they voluntarily exchange with you as well. But when you get to the next stakeholder level, which includes activists, critics, journalists, the government, the various ones, they're stakeholders because they can impact the business, but they're not voluntarily exchanging with it. You need to listen to them. But all the stakeholders are interdependent, but again, they're not all equal, but they all need to be taken into account. Probably the most controversial thing I'm going to say today, I'm going to make the case for meritocracy, because I don't hear it being made in the world any longer. So conscious businesses should never discriminate for or against anyone on the basis of race, gender, sexual preferences, religious, or political beliefs. The conscious business should strive to be post-racial, post-gender, post-religious, post-political, because those things are things to be transcended. And the conscious business doesn't care about any of that stuff. I mean, they care about it if it's a problem, but they don't act that way in the world. There's only one thing businesses should discriminate on: competence. That's all that matters, is competence. You should hire and promote the most capable people you can. And to the degree that you don't do that, to that degree, you're not fulfilling your higher purpose, and you are harming your stakeholder community because you're sub-optimizing your business, and therefore you're sub-optimizing what's your purpose and why you even exist in the world. That being said, each of us has to make these kind of decisions for themselves and their own businesses. But I'm very worried that meritocracy is being lost in America. It's being wiped out. And that's sad, because businesses have got to be based on meritocracy or they're going to just wither away. As conscious leaders, we must try to live and act from the higher ground. We have to be able to see the beauties of traditionalism, of modernity, and of progressivism. And they all have beautiful traits. And they all have a shadow side. And we have to be able to put that shadow side in perspective and not let the shadows dominate. One of the sad truths is most people live in a win-lose framework, meaning that, and this is what they don't understand about business. They're obsessed with the idea that business has people that are winning and therefore people are losing, and it's a zero-sum game. That's how sports work, right? I just watched my baseball team get beat by the Rangers, and it was sad. I was sad. But now I'm pulling for the Rangers because I'm a Texan too. Go Rangers, baby! But the point in sports is there's only a few winners and a lot of losers. Same thing in games. And that's how many people interpret life, that the winners take all. There's a few winners and lots of losers. That's not the way it is in business. In business, there's lots and lots of winners. It's a win-win-win system. Capitalism is a win-win-win system, and that's why the world is making progress. And we have to live from that higher ground. And when we have conflicts and problems, we have to figure out the win-win-win solution. Good for me, good for you, good for all of us. If we look for the win-win-win solutions, we can usually find them. There are synergies to be had. But I also want to say that sometimes you can't find the win-win-win solution. Sometimes it's a failure of imagination, but oftentimes we're just not smart enough or good enough, and we make trade-offs. There's no getting around it. There's trade-offs in business. We have to make the tough decisions. We have to do what we think is best. And that is unfortunate. But ultimately, utopia is not possible. And one of my things I'm worried about the young generation is that there are so many utopians in the young generation that compare capitalism or compare the modern world not to the past, but to what they think it could be in their minds. And that's fine, because that's one way we make progress. It's bad if you want to think you can tear it all down and build it back better, because that's not going to work. We must do the very best we're capable of doing. Look for the higher ground, look for the win-win-wins, and make trade-offs when we have to. So I'm running out of time, I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to talk a little bit about, now I'm 70. I know, incredible. I never thought I'd get to be 70. When I was young, I just figured there were two kinds of people in the world. There were young people and there were old people. And I was one of the young people. Yeah, that seemed reasonable and fair to me. I've had this incredible life. My life's been so fantastic. And it's been just building Whole Foods and doing what I've been doing. It's just been an amazing adventure. I'm going to now make a little pitch for a book I've got coming out next May 21st called The Whole Story, My Adventures in Love, Life, and Capitalism. It's a long book, about 450 pages. It reads like a novel because it's got all this dialogue. It's just one big, long adventure story. I talk about my own spiritual journey. I talk about psychedelics. I talk about Whole Foods. I tell all this stuff. I couldn't tell. There were 4 coup attempts. 4 times I got tried to take me out over the 44 years. Fought them all off. So I will tell you, in the 70 years, the most important thing I've learned is the importance of love. That's the purpose of life. The purpose of life is love. That is what I'm going to share with you. That's what we came here to do. We came here to awaken deeper to love. Love is at the essence of our hearts. And if I was to boil down conscious capitalism to just one word, I would say love. That's what we're here to do with business. We're going to love our way to a better world and a better society. I will tell you that, I know that, and I know it right now. I forget it. I forget it thousands of times. But what I've learned is, in the next moment, you can remember and you can go back to it. So I forget, I get into conflict, I fight, I debate, I argue, I alienate friends, and then I remember, I take a breath. It's just about love. It's just about love. That's all that really matters. All the other stuff's bullshit. So I'm going to do an exercise to end my talk today. So I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to close their eyes. We're going to take a very deep and relaxed breath. And as you do that inhale, I want you to think or say quietly under your breath, I am. I am. Hold the breath for just an instant, and then you're going to exhale it, and then think or vocalize the word love. By the way, you're all doing it, I haven't started yet. I was doing a guided journey about 16 months ago. And this actually didn't come from any psychedelics. This came from a breath work session I was having. And I got this real clear communication. When you do breath work, I really highly recommend that. You will get deeper in connection to your soul. And my soul very quickly spoke to me. It just said the mantra, I am love. My ego immediately argued with it. You're not love, you're an asshole. Yeah. My ego, I don't know about your ego, my ego is this crabby, little old man who just finds fault with everybody, especially with me. So, but no, the soul was very clear. I am love when I am in my heart. I am love when I am in my heart. And I can be in my heart in the next instant. So that's where that came from. And I do this, this is how I start out my day, practicing the I am love meditation. So we're going to do it right now. So let's try it. We'll do 3 breaths. Inhale. I. Hold it. Love. I am. I. I am love, my friends, and so are all of you. Thank you so very much.